We flew from Baltimore to Las Vegas, and upon arriving in Las Vegas, we took an Uber to our hotel at the Rio. After waiting for a little while and not being able to check into a room, we finally got it figured out, and they put us up in the penthouse suite. So I decided to give a little tour of that, and here it is. Say hi to the camera. I haven't looked. I'm taking a tour of this ridiculous fucking room. Say hi. Hey. Fucking monster TVs. Look at this big ass window. After spending the night in Vegas, we went out to breakfast at the closest place, which was a Denny's, and then we took a Uber down to our rental car place. Here you see us checking out the rental car so we could hop in and head straight for the hills. Our first stop outside of Vegas was Valley of Fire State Park in Nevada. Here at Valley of Fire, we were able to come in on the west entrance, stop at Beehive Rock Formations, Atlatl Rock. Then we drove up the main road, stopped at the Fire Canyon Overlook, and headed towards the White Domes Loop. We didn't have terribly much time, so we didn't stop at too many spots other than a few overlooks here and there. Here's a video that I shot hiking off of the Fire Canyon Road. In Valley of Fire, you can see the overlooks near the Silica Dome and the change of the sandstone. It's just an absolutely gorgeous area to hike. It was one of the only times I really got out of the car and walked around, but it was totally worth it, and we had just a blast in this park. I had been to many of these locations before that you are going to see in this video, but this trip was special to me because I was able to kind of play tour guide to my mom and stepdad and show them around places that have been so special to me for so many years. Of course, at Valley of Fire, I had to stop and get that iconic shot, and I was able to do some things I had never done before, but a lot of it was just showing people places that I really love, and I just had a very special few weeks in Utah, and I am forever grateful that I was able to spend this time out there, and especially that it was with family. We woke up that next morning in a hotel in St. George, Utah, which was not the greatest accommodation, so I'm not going to mention anything about it here. We headed into Zion National Park to grab an early shuttle, got parking at the visitor center, which is always great, and we headed straight back to the Riverside Walk and then kind of moseyed our way out of the park. We had a really nice time. It was great to do some slower paced stuff in a park like that where I'm usually doing rigorous hikes, so we took our time, smelled the roses, and got to see a lot of neat stuff while we were out there. On the way out of the park, we were able to hit the museum, took the shuttle back to the visitor center, then headed up towards the east entrance of the park to head out towards where we would get dinner. On the way out of the park, though, I was able to do a little hike out towards some petroglyphs and ended up meeting an archaeologist that was doing a site revisit on the petroglyphs, so I had a very nice time chatting with them, visiting the rock art, and just taking a little side hike by myself. After leaving the park, we stopped at the Thunderbird restaurant in Mount Carmel Junction, which has the best apple pie with buttered rum you could ever try. And then we headed over to the Belly of the Dragon hike, which is just a short walk from the car, really close to the Thunderbird restaurant. And after that, we headed out towards the Dixie National Forest, where I hopped out of the car and hiked the Arches Trail, which was absolutely breathtaking. It was a lot of elevation gain, but you can see some pretty cool stuff even if you don't hike to the top. After I wrapped up this quick hike, we piled back in the car and headed towards Bryce Canyon City to the Bryce View Lodge where we stayed the night, which was a great hotel. Then we got to wake up and experience this sunrise in the morning, and it was absolutely one of the highlights of the trip for me and one of the best experiences I've had in a national park to date. It was about 25 degrees out that morning, so while Mom went to warm up and thaw out in the car, Kurt took in the views of the amphitheater, and I hiked down into the amphitheater on the Navajo Loop Trail. Unfortunately, the Wall Street section of the trail was still closed, so I hiked the Two Bridges section down to the junction and then back up out. It was a beautiful hike. I saw a deer on the side of the trail. There was barely anybody down there because it was so early in the morning. And then I hiked back up to Sunset Point, which is where we watched the sunrise from. On the way up out of there, I stopped by this little spur off the trail that hiked out towards this little window and took in the amphitheater view from this little hole in the rock. And then I hiked up to the top and joined Kurt just to take in the beautiful views of the amphitheater that you can see right here. Once we took in these views, we hopped in the car with Mom, who was finally starting to thaw out, and headed back to Ruby's Bryce View Lodge for their continental breakfast, which was one of the best, if not the best, we had on the entire trip. And then we got back in the car and drove the road to the back of Bryce Canyon and stopped by all the overlooks and just enjoyed the park from all of the viewpoints. I then capped off the visit to Bryce with a quick hike up the Mossy Cave Trail, which I've been wanting to do for years after passing the trailhead on the highway. And then we made a quick visit to Kodachrome Basin State Park on the way towards Grand Staircase Escalante and our little rustic cabin at an RV park in Torrey, Utah for the night. In Torrey, we ate at a really delicious Mexican restaurant called Choc Balam, kind of on the edge of town, and stayed in that small rustic cabin at Wonderland RV Park and just waited till the morning to head into Capitol Reef National Park. We started the day at Panorama Point and the Goosnecks overlook, which is what you see right here. And then we moved into Fruta to head down the scenic drive towards the Capitol Gorge and Grand Wash roads. But once we got to the sign before the roads started, we decided to turn around and make sure the roads were safe. We love those leave no trace principles, like plan ahead and prepare. So we went back to the ranger station and discussed with them. Everything sounded like it was good. But luckily we went back because we learned that the pie shop was open, which I had never been able to get pie in my many times in Capitol Reef National Park. So we stopped in, got some delicious pie, 3 different flavors we were able to try, and then we headed down towards the 2 gravel roads of Grand Wash and Capitol Gorge, and saw some petroglyphs along the way. Then we left the park by way of the Fruita School and stopped and had some lunch at a granary outside of the park on some BLM land, past the Factory Butte area, and then headed to Goblin Valley State Park. These two right here were my favorite goblins, and I walked around the valley for a little while Mom and Kurt stayed at the overlooks, and after we wrapped up here, we headed to Green River, Utah, where I accidentally booked the hotel for Green River, Wyoming, but Super 8 was great and changed my booking. And here's my favorite picture all trip. The next morning we woke up and headed into Arches National Park, just beating our timed entry at 7, which you can get in before 7 if you don't have a timed entry. We started the day by beelining back to the Delicate Arch trailhead. I really wanted to hike up here because I had not had the opportunity to do that in the past. And Mom and Kurt stayed down below and went to the observation point down a little further down the road. I hiked up and took these videos on the way out from the arch and went back to the parking lot afterwards to go meet up with them so we could explore the rest of the park. But I really enjoyed this hike. I thought it was a little more technical near the end than it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a pretty easy hike. It was some decent elevation gain in the beginning, and then some of these more narrow corridors with the steep drops off to the right you can see here. I thought it was a pretty cool trail, and had a great time in the park, and we just got to see so many cool overlooks and so many good sights. So here's some photos from all that. That first trail that you saw us on was Sand Dune Arch. It's a nice short little hike to that arch. You can make it a longer hike and hit Broken Arch and Tapestry Arch, which we did not do. And then this hike I did by myself, which is another short one back to Skyline Arch. And then after Skyline Arch, we went back to the Salt Valley Overlook, which you saw us at earlier. And that's where we had lunch. It was a nice quiet overlook parking lot. So we just enjoyed a little bit of time there. And this is the kind of spin around view from up at that viewpoint where you can see the valley, you can see the Manti La Sal Mountains in the background, and a bunch of arches right in front of you. Just an absolutely gorgeous overlook. And then we left the park after doing the hike up to Double Arch, which is what you see us doing right here. We love Double Arch. It's one of my favorite in the park. It's spectacular. And then we saw these dinosaur prints and petroglyphs. We wrapped the day up with dinner at the Moab Diner, drinks at the Broken Oar with some of Kurt's friends, and stayed at the Virginia Inn in Moab. The next morning we headed into Canyonlands National Park after breakfast at the Moab Diner. This one was especially fun for me because we hit all the overlooks, but what I didn't tell them was as we were leaving, we stopped by the visitor center so I could check on the conditions of the Schaefer Trail and then surprise them before we hit the exit gate by making the quick right turn to head the 1,500 foot drop down the canyon wall onto the trail. And I don't think they loved me for doing it, but I think it was probably one of the most memorable parts of the trip for everybody. After having a quick snack down at the bottom of the Schaefer Trail where it meets the White Rim Road, we ascended the canyon and made it to Dead Horse Point State Park. This was a new one for me, so I was pretty excited to see this. And I thought the views were absolutely spectacular, maybe even better than some from the top of Canyonlands. So I'd highly recommend adding this one on if you're headed back to the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands. As this story goes, some cowboys would corral horses behind a thin neck on this mesa top, and they left them there to starve, and they could see the water about 2,000 feet below. And if you look closely at this picture, on the left side of the river, you can see a little white horse that's said to be the spirit of all the horses that were barricaded back there and left to die of thirst. We went south from Moab down to Blanding, Utah, stayed at the Four Corners Inn. We were going to have a 0 day that following day, but ended up running to Colorado and going through Hovenweep and Canyon Ancient National Monument on the way to Mesa Verde. I was so thrilled by this park. The entrance was not at all what I imagined. All of the cultural resources were in impeccable condition, and it just was a dream to be able to see how much quality there was to this park and the extent of it. I was just blown away. It was absolutely awesome to experience this place. I would highly recommend checking this one out too. Everything we did I'd recommend checking out, but this I was pleasantly surprised with. Bears Ears is another one that contains so many archaeological sites and so much beauty, so many special places. This is a shot out on top of the Moki Dugway down towards the Valley of the Gods. We stopped here on our way towards Monument Valley. I absolutely love this place. I came across it when moving from Montana to Arizona, and I try to swing by here any chance I can get. This valley down below here is an incredible place to stop. And Bears Ears National Monument and Grand Staircase, where we were earlier, are under threat of reduction in size at this current moment in time while I'm editing this video. And I just think it's important to show these special and sacred places and understand that we aren't guaranteed these public lands. We sometimes need to fight for them. We need to show people how beautiful they are and how much they mean. And I hope that if you're watching this, you feel the same way. We made our way to Goosnecks State Park and then to Monument Valley. The road in Monument Valley was horrible. It was very difficult to drive. I'd been here before on days it was way less crazy. They were actually filming a movie, and it just made everything that much more chaotic. It wasn't the least stressful time I'd had in Monument Valley, so I didn't love it, but it is always a good experience to go, and I do love this peak. It is an extinct volcano core. The next day, we headed out to Grand Canyon National Park after staying the night in Tuba City, and just a ton of gorgeous views at the overlooks there. I'll just play a little slideshow for you. We entered the Grand Canyon through the east entrance station and left through the southern entrance station and headed down towards Williams, Arizona, where we'd stay that night. I was so impressed by this Route 66 town. It was the best one we saw. We did a little bit more of Route 66, headed back towards Nevada, and I thought it was super neat. Stopped in Chloride, accidentally didn't intend to do this, and it was a really neat town. I'd recommend swinging by there too. Got a little overlook of Lake Mead right by the Hoover Dam, and then we headed to Vegas to go out on the town with my buddy Mike from high school. It was great to be able to spend time with Mike, and that's how we wound up the trip. Just a few days in Vegas to hang out with old friends. I just can't express my gratitude enough to have been able to spend time with family in such beautiful places. And I just can't wait until I'm able to get out there and do it all over again and hopefully be able to do it with some people that I love. Thanks for watching.